Welcome to this latest in a series of workshops sponsored by the Peterborough Renewable Energy Project, or PREP. Today's topic is harvesting solar energy, talking about how you can make use of the energy of the sun in your own home. As you may know, PREP is the organization that is helping the town of Peterborough achieve the energy goals set for it by the voters in 2021. Those goals are for the entire town to rely on 100% renewable energy for electricity by 2030, and to rely on renewable energy only for heat, transportation, and all other uses by 2050. Today's workshop had some technical difficulties when the workshop was taking place, and as a result, neither the primary system nor our backup system for recording the workshop produced usable audio at the beginning of the workshop. So you'll be hearing this voiceover from me, replacing the introduction provided by PREP co-coordinator Dory Drockman, and then by John Kondos as he went through the first of his slides. We'll pick up with John when we get to the second slide. So, as indicated, our workshop leader is John Kondos. You see him here actually at the workshop. He has been engaged in a variety of activities related to solar energy for decades. When he went for his MBA in Arizona many years ago, he saw for the first time, I believe, sun harvesting taking place. There's plenty of sun in Arizona and people were making use of it there. When he returned to Massachusetts, he started working in the solar industry, such as it was then, selling and installing photovoltaic products, really all over the world, in Asia, in Latin America, and in New England. At that time, the wholesale cost of photovoltaic products, and that is products that convert light to electricity, was about $50 a watt. Since then, I'm happy to say it has dropped to under 100 cents, under $1 a watt, and at the same time has greatly improved in the efficiency with which it converts light to electricity. Here's a bit more about John. He founded businesses of his own, but he also worked on community development in this area. He was a co-founder of the organization that eventually became what we now know as the Monadnock Sustainability Hub, and most recently, prior to his retirement, he was Clean Energy New Hampshire's circuit rider for the Monadnock region, helping towns in the region plan and execute energy projects. As you'll see here on this slide, sun harvesting has been going on for quite a while, not always using photovoltaic products. And as long ago as 70 years ago, at least 70 years ago, the huge potential for drawing energy from the sun for the uses of civilization was well recognized. So this workshop will provide an overview of different ways in which the sun can be used to provide energy for your home, and then delve into some more detail specifically on the notion of of installing a solar array to generate electricity for your home. At the end of the workshop, there'll be an opportunity for question and answer, not by those of you listening to me now, but there was at the workshop, and then we'll wrap up. So John will begin speaking shortly. Thank you.
Crystalline silicon started out as the standard technology. I remember after I had worked in the crystalline manufacturer for about 4 years, and I got a chance to go to an amorphous silicon manufacturer, and I thought, oh, this is where to go because they're going to be so much cheaper. Well, here we are decades later, and amorphous is still trying to chase crystalline silicon. So the technology just kept getting better and better and better, more efficient, and much, much, much less expensive, as I alluded. And amorphous is still chasing it. New technologies like perovskite are trying to work their way in, but they got to prove they're better than this product that keeps getting better and cheaper. And that's a hard challenge to beat. Batteries are following that same kind of a path. They're just much more recent. So if the solar curve for pricing and improvements in efficiencies really started to take off after 2005, roughly, The battery one has just started in the last couple of years, and it's doing the same thing. The technologies keeps getting better and the prices are dropping like a stone. Because partially a lot more manufacturing. And so we can move on, Bob, to the next slide, but that's just some perspective and background. I do want to take a minute and just talk about other forms of solar, just in case you aren't aware. And if anyone's building a house or putting an addition on their house, I seriously, strongly urge you to look at passive solar. I mean, I started out looking at this and learning about it when I became curious about it. And the whole idea is to let the sun in and then capture it, hold on to it with some, ideally some thermal mass, and then using effective windows and window shades, which I use very extensively in my house. I can manage to keep a lot of that heat in or out during the summer when it's really intense. And then by circulating the air, you can really take advantage of it. And I spend very little on heating. And those who have even better built houses than I have, because mine wasn't built as a passive house, which is the ultimate kind of solar house, meaning very, very efficient, very tight and all that good stuff. You can actually have almost no other heating source. So we go on to the next slide. I just wanted to kind of let people know about that. Solar thermal was all we had until really about 2000. I mean, when I started my solar contracting business the second time in 2007, I did a lot of solar water heaters because that was still the technology that was proven and was cost effective, et cetera. And photovoltaics were just getting down that price curve. So they hadn't really gotten everywhere. And there were no incentives in New Hampshire. So the only photovoltaics I installed were in Vermont because they had incentives. But those kind of batch heaters that you see on the left there, they're very common. If you travel into tropical areas, you've seen these. They're all over the place in countries like Greece and Israel and across the Caribbean. You'll see those because they don't have freezing temperatures. So you just put water and let the water sit there up on the roof and it's all gravity fed. But it's a darn cheap way to get nice hot water. And then around here, we use things like evacuated tubes and flat plate collectors. And they still work really well, but pool heaters are probably the best opportunity if you wanted to use solar thermal other than passive, which again, that would be your number one choice. But pool heating, it's very effective and economical in our environment. Go to the next one. Just a quick view of those. So those are just a couple of flat plate collectors and an air collector, which is basically something you can put on your wall and air will go through it. And then in that middle, I'm sorry, if you just keep that for a second longer. That middle picture on the bottom was this is another form of electrical generation, which is what we're going to talk about from now on. That's a large desert concentrating system. Those are mirrors focused on the tower, and in that tower is usually a molten salt or some other chemical that they're going to superheat and generate steam, just like a regular power plant does. They use, instead of using gas or oil or coal to make the steam, they use in the mirrors and concentrating it on a point. And then those two on the bottom on either side are photovoltaics. So you can get photovoltaics that aren't flat plate like the ones on the other side. So next slide. Just a quick one. We talked briefly, I alluded to this. So monocrystalline are the most pure. And that's if you have a small roof area, for example, I would recommend using monocrystalline silicon modules because you're going to get more power out of each module because it's the highest, efficiency. Polycrystalline are the most common because they're very close behind monocrystalline and much less expensive to make. So you'd find that's the majority of what you'd find out there in modules you'd be buying. I alluded to the amorphous. They're still, chasing the efficiencies of the single crystalline products, but they are also much less expensive to make. So for really large utility scale plants, there's a company in the United States called First Solar that makes a lot of this. But they're not used on residential not because of the lower efficiency. The smaller area doesn't make sense. And multi-junction, those have been around for a while. They're used in space and they're very expensive, but I'll be willing to bet that hopefully in my lifetime, we'll see more of those make the mainstream and then they'll see jumps in efficiency from where we are today. And simple, in terms of sort of vocabulary, a cell is what's manufactured that does the work. They're strung together electrically into a module, which is what you might also sometimes call a panel. And then those are put together in an array, and that's what you're going to use.
How much better are mono versus poly as far as efficiency?
It's usually only a couple of percentage points, 2 or 3. So it's not a lot, but you're going from 20, 18 0.5 to 20 or 20.5, it's that 1 or 2%.
And what's the price difference?
Generally, you're gonna get a little better price on the poly, so that combination of that, they'll offset each other, so what you might lose in efficiency, you'll save a price on an array. The array of mono will still be higher priced, probably a little bit, and again, if you've got a limited array area, like garage roof or a house roof, you might weigh that, but if you really want it over 20 years, 30 years, that little bit extra might add up. And so that's, otherwise, I think polycrystalline are perfectly fine, especially if you're not limited by area. So we probably can go on. So again, to kind of summarize some of the reasons that I'm excited about photovoltaics and have been for so long is there's no moving parts. So there's really no maintenance. I mean, the only maintenance I've done in 20 odd years of panels is scrape a little bit of the snow off to get a jump on the day's production. Of course, they're quiet. So I'm gonna go about a quick overview of different system types for the sake of argument, grid tie being what most people would have. I'll mention off-grid because if you have a property that's, like say you wanted to build a cabin or you wanted to put a outbuilding on your property somewhere far away from where the utility power is, that's an option, and then we'll talk about hybrids. So we'll go through the real simple, you're always gonna have your PV array. It's gonna go through an inverter power conditioner that will possibly provide, it'll provide the AC power that you need for your on-grid, goes into your distribution panel. And then in a normal PV system in a home, you're gonna power your system is gonna power the house first. So whatever your building, whatever it is, but they're gonna take care of that. And then the excess electricity, when there is any, will just go out to the grid. And likewise, when the solar isn't making enough power, utility feeds in and it all just flows. There's no interruptions or anything like that in there. Go to the next one.
Till the power goes out.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second. So now in an off-grid system, it may look more complicated, but it doesn't have to be because you don't really need AC. I mean, I remember in the early days, everything was DC powered. If you think about DC, the marine industry and the RV industry both have a lot of DC components. I mean, you can get, obviously your car runs on DC, so stereo equipment, auto equipment works, but you can get all kind of refrigerators, blenders, appliances, all sorts of stuff in the DC world. And then you don't even need to think about having to go through an inverter. But either way, you're going to charge the battery and then run DC, or you can have an inverter and then run AC. And all this is done without any utility interconnection. So next slide. So then in a hybrid system, which is really where you go for for backup power, essentially. And this kind of complicates it because it adds the option of a generator tied in with it. My system, I don't have a generator, I just have a battery. So eventually the PV array goes through a charge controller and I don't have any DC loads. I go directly through, there's a controller, there surely should be a controller in between here that tells me that I can go to the battery and then to the inverter. I wouldn't have that part, and then to the AC loads, and again, in a power outage, it's only part of the house is powered by the system. It doesn't power the whole house because it's not big enough.
Does lithium ion replace lead acid?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my system was installed in 2012, and I had adjusted glass mat batteries, which was the technology of the time for the storage. And when those, after 12 years, just didn't work any longer, I just installed lithium. Phosphate, but the iron, lithium iron, a little bit less risk there, and also lower cost, and they don't want, the weight doesn't matter being in the house. So, and the nice thing about that is I don't have to deal with the generator maintenance. I love that the batteries just sit there. There's no maintenance whatsoever. So we can go on. So now maybe talking a little about economics, and this is just an example, and the prices can be all over the place, and probably even as module, like as I mentioned earlier, module prices there's a supply and demand kind of a thing, and right now supply of modules is greater than the demand globally. It's a global market, obviously, on a huge scale, but right now is a good time to actually be getting a system, so you might even be able to get under those kind of prices if everything's ideal. But these are installed costs, so they vary. Everybody's house, if you have a multi-story house versus a nice low roof, or if you put a ground mount in, obviously you've got to build a rack. So that's why the range. But let's just say we pick a 5,000 watt array, 5 kilowatt, and let's just say for the sake of argument, it costs 15,000. You're gonna get a 30% federal tax credit. And unfortunately, right now, to my knowledge, the New Hampshire doesn't have any incentives, but they have them off and on. They come and go. So there are potential additional incentives. But you generate with that, again, depending on how perfectly south it is and what the exact angle of the array, depending again, if it's on the roof or on the ground, something like 6,000 kilowatt hours a year. And again, I'm using the all-in cost for electricity because you're not only gonna get your supply side, but your delivery side, you're gonna get the transmission and distribution. Now, unfortunately, in New Hampshire right now, net metering, you only get 25% of the distribution. But you get that, all those other little fees you save, you're not spending that money, so I picked 20 cents, that net number fluctuates, as we all know. But there's another $1,200 towards your paying off your system.
So that would be like an 8-year payback.
In this example, yeah, and that assumes, again, no loan, but also no state or utility incentives, which you might. And then there's also the possibility of selling RECs, which, you know, the RECs market is also volatile, but you can sell your 6,000 kilowatt hours of generation on a RECs market, and you'll get a small check of $50 or $100, depending on, you know, the exact price and how many kilowatt hours you have as an incentive.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused on the net metering. Cause I'm looking at this too, and obviously, and I was assuming that the net metering was basically gonna be like a battery for you. Whatever you put in, you would get back, but you're telling me you only get 20% back?
No, let me explain that. Net metering is the ability to interface with the grid and sell the electric.
Right.
So what happens in New Hampshire, net metering in New Hampshire is about to go through a change. There's a docket before the PUC right now.
Okay,
What I spoke about was if you're producing electricity with your system and you have excess that you're selling.
Yeah.
Under New Hampshire's current rule, which is about to change, you get you save all of the supply costs, whatever it is, you get all of the transmission, but you only get 25% of the distribution piece. So when you look at your bill, you got all these lines.
yes, yeah.
So that just that one line, back in 2017, I think it was, so I get 100% of that because my systems are prior to.
Yes.
2000.
Grandfathered in.
But now, you're in net metering 2 right now, and you would get only 25% of the distribution back.
Okay,
So you're getting a little less than 100%.
well, and distribution costs are more than the actual electric bill. For us, for me anyway.
No, they're just a line item on your,
Yeah, more than the supply,
Yeah.
yes, they could be, yeah.
Yeah, they are. So, yeah, I just went through this, so I was trying, before I came, to try and figure out, you know, where I could save money.
The thing is, depending on how fast you get installed, there may be a whole new rule very, very soon from the PUC. When they
Okay.
do make their ruling, whether, you know, we're arguing that the argument that Clean Energy New Hampshire, where I used to work, and I recommend them as a resource for anyone who's interested in this subject, that it's worth more. We're reducing the distribution costs too. So that 25% is an arbitrary and unfair penalty, if you will. They should give more. And so whether that will change, we don't know, but anyway.
The federal tax credit, how long is that?
That's now been installed for 10 years, so there's 9
No,
more
it's
years
about
on.
10
So you've got 9 years to
8.
get 8
It
now.
was part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
in 2022.
Thank you. Yeah,
And does that come out of your income tax? Or you get a check?
you have to, it's against your liability, so you need to have a taxable, you have to have a taxable income
Yeah.
to offset. So it just takes away. So if you owe the federal government, what are we gonna give you for the tax credit there? About 5,000. You owe 10,000, you're only gonna pay 5 because you're gonna get a credit for that 30%.
You can roll over the credit to
That's
subsequent years,
Yes.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
if you can't use it all in one year.
So you can use 10, 10, 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it for 3 years, and so it needs to be used up in either this year or the subsequent 2 years.
So you have a 3-year window,
Yes.
okay.
And then obviously the last point goes without saying, and unfortunately, you don't get any real credit for that, but you're making a real significant contribution to keeping our air cleaner. So,
We'll give you credit for it. We don't give you any money.
Way that it helps with cost. And I don't remember if it's in here. Do you have the peaker plant piece in here?
no, I didn't do that.
So on a few days a year, when it's really hot or really cold, we have to turn on what are called peaker plants, because those are the days that have peak demand.
Mhm.
And they're very expensive to turn on. And with more folks with rooftop solar, you can avoid the need for firing up those peaker plants, which means that it's way less expensive because you're using your own generated electricity. And so that saves everybody money.
Yeah, that goes back to the net metering discussion. really.
Yes.
So, yeah. Now, hopefully that message gets across to the powers that be. So now in terms of the steps, for those of you that are interested in pursuing this, you need a shade-free location, that's gonna be able to hold the panels. It can be on a roof, it can be on the ground. And 12 by 25 is just a starter, kind of a basic area. It could be bigger, depends on the next issue, which is how much electricity you use. It's hard to say because of the net metering math and the subject here. I honestly often tell people, that homeowners at least, to not try to do more than 100% of your electricity, because you're not going to get as much back. So in other words, when you produce your own electricity and you don't buy any, you're going to really save all of it. It's when you transfer any electricity to the state, now you've got that, with what we talked about before, you're going to only get 25% towards of the distribution, but you do get the rest of it. So you're already getting shaved a little bit. So producing electricity in New Hampshire is not to your advantage to sell to the utility. It doesn't really pay like it might.
Would an exception be if you also have battery storage?
Well, yeah, that's another subject.
Right.
And then the other part that's hard about this equation is, as an EV owner, if you aren't an EV owner, I hope you will plan to at least try one, and then you will be one, because most people who test drive an EV tend to find out how great they are. So that would increase your electric load. So there's things to factor into your plans, but I'm not gonna go into that in any more detail than to say, try to match your system to your electric usage. But if you're gonna, you're gonna get an EV, then you can say, okay, I'll get a little bigger system to charge for that.
I just wanted to clarify, EV, is that the heat
Electric
pump?
vehicle, electric.
Oh,
vehicle,
okay, no,
sorry.
I'm thinking
Car.
heat pump, so.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, heat pumps, so the same thing. And if you know you're gonna increase your electric load, you're gonna do that, then you may design a bigger system and live with that, not getting all your money back kind of thing, but it's not like it's a deal killer. But the main reason is that you want to match your electric usage reasonably. I highly recommend you get multiple quotes and checking references. I mean, again, this is a long life system. It's going to last for decades. So penny wise and pounds foolish is probably a really bad strategy. You want to get somebody who's really good, and you want to know that their workmanship is going to be good. Tier 1 modules refers to the manufacturer of the modules. And all it is it's a financial tool that says the module manufacturer will probably be around. The financial industry looks at their balance sheets and their substance and says, okay, they look like they're going to be around. And that just gives you some confidence that, the module manufacturer will be there. Should you, and again, I've never seen a module warranty exercise.
How
But
do you check that? Would that be?
that's something your contractor would tell you whether their modules are. And it's also, I think, I don't know, it's not Bloomberg, it's one of those financial entities that can tell you who's tier 1, but they publish a list. And they do the analysis of the manufacturers and then say they qualify under this tier 1.
So a do-it-yourselfer would be able to find that out.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure if you Google it, you can find a way to find out. And obviously, if you're looking at a manufacturer X, you should be able to cross-reference that, are they a tier 1? And if they're not, well,
All right.
you're taking a risk that they're not going to be there if you ever need the warranty. A bigger risk. I mean, it's not saying they will, but the tier 1 is ostensibly a pretty high comfort level that the manufacturer is going to be around. And then your contractor should provide all your paperwork. There is some, you know, to go through, and they should be able to do all that for you, but you want to confirm that and any permits, et cetera. So,
Eversource Power Clerk, do they do that?
they should, I mean, again, it's gonna be, you talk to your contractor, but they should be able to do that. So we've talked a lot about, you know, harvesting fuel directly yourself. There are other ways, obviously, you know, Peterborough, you have the great opportunity anyway. Other communities that have community power can opt to buy more, you know, clean electricity, and might supplement your photovoltaic system, so you can buy the balance of what you do buy, and since you're only gonna be buying a small amount, that works out really well if you do go ahead and put your own system in. And then obviously there's community solar, which I know Dory's gonna talk about. And I think that's it, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. There's a couple other resources there for you if you wanna know those.
So can I do the community solar piece?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think we're fine.
One point though about community power is that it's not set up right now for net metering.
Correct.
That's
So-
Yes, that's because it was originally planned to do that. It's in the legislation, but the utilities have been fighting it. I did want to speak a moment just about the community solar option.
Sorry. When you do so, would you mind moving?
Happy to do that. Yes, thank you. Excuse me. So there is a community solar array that's going to be built in Jaffrey. And what community solar allows is for folks who don't have an ideal roof or an ideal site at all, to be able to buy into a very large array. You would get the same incentives. And you would be able to run on your solar array that would be remotely located in Jaffrey. Revision Energy is the first one that is doing this in the area. That they're calling it a solar farm. So there's a couple of different models for community solar. This is one where you're actually buying it outright. And so they are yours. You can transfer it if you move anywhere within the Eversource region. You'd be able to have them follow you. And there is a way to sign up for it. It is not very user friendly. So there are these like slips that will give you all of the information, the website and the instructions for how to sign up to find out more, to see if you would like to use that as an option. And it's by going to the Revision website. And you have to scroll way down on that page to where you can see that there is a place for you to enter your information. It does not mention Jaffrey. It does not. So it's, as I said, it's not very user friendly right now, but it is. If you go to this website, I guarantee you it is the right place. So I just wanted to put that out there as an option for folks. And I don't know if people want to take one of these, or I could just leave them up here.
Sorry, could I just put comments last question on it? Because I did sign up for that at one point. It wasn't very user friendly. I didn't end up doing it because it was a variable rate plan. They didn't have a fixed rate plan.
Oh,
And I'm not really, at least at the time I did it, this was several months ago. I think we're talking about the same thing.
I don't know or not, because this array has not actually been built yet.
There is some community solar thing that is not just for Peterborough. It must be some kind of cooperative. So this is different.
This is different, yes, and I'd be very interested
at
in
it.
finding out more about what you're referring to.
Yeah, it was a variable rate and I really didn't like the idea of I wanted a fixed rate plan because the markets are so crazy.
So this wouldn't be a rate, because you would be owning it outright.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
we'll
buying
look
it,
at-
yeah, you've got 10 units in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So this is,
We would be interested.
okay,
Yeah.
great.
That plan is for the co-op, and they buy the power, but they get like a 2 or 3 year contract versus Eversource, it only goes like every 6 months, they could change.
That's community
Right,
power.
right.
That's different than
It's-
community
Oh,
solar.
right, it's not a,
Yes.
they can have renewables as part of it, but.
Right,
it's
so,
not-
but that's
it's
different than what this is. This is actually owning solar panels, but just not on your roof.
Basically, they just remote units.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you charge to have the power come to you then?
so that is a really good question if you have to pay distribution and transmission costs.
I imagine you would, yeah,
Probably.
yeah.
So it would be less, you'd have a longer return on investment.
Can that be sold if you, to the people who buy your house, or you actually have to take it with you?
I believe so, but the people to actually ask about this would be Revision.
So
Do
they've
you
done
have
this,
a contact at Revision that we could reach out to? Do
Say that again?
you have a contact name or phone number of someone there who is knowledgeable about the community solar program?
Sign up on our site.
Yes, if you would, yes, there is, and if, yeah, I would say email us at info@prepnh.org. And we will research the best person to contact directly. They also say at the bottom of this webpage to, you could also email hello@revisionenergy.com. Yes.
So the other thing to consider would be, if you buy this, say you buy this for, say, a 5 kilowatt unit or whatever, it doesn't matter what size it is, but then, if there's maintenance costs, say an inverter or a hailstorm hits the panels, that's another thing to consider,
Who is responsible for that?
exactly, 'cause
Yeah.
that could affect it quite a bit.
I
Yeah,
mean, for this system here,
Yeah, for,
Vision is gonna be the one who would be responsible for this one.
Right, but there would be a fee for it.
yeah, I would imagine there would be a fee for it if they,
Oh, but yeah,
yeah, so this is a really important piece to get clear on. So this is, what I'm hearing is that there's interest and that maybe we should bring in Revision to talk about this.
and that would, yeah, I think that would be a very good thing, because, a lot of people don't have the ideal situation. And like I have, I could have it on my roof, but I really hate to cut my trees,
Right,
because the trees shade me in the summertime.
right.
So, yeah, this would be a great alternative.
So I'm gonna pass these out. Actually, there's three of you on this.
Do you know where in Jaffrey they're doing the install for this?
I don't.
They're doing it on a brown.
all these.
Oh, yes, yes, that's right. They're doing it on a brownfield. I'm not sure which one.
Like, it's really down.
Because I live in Jaffrey
And it
too.
can be used for anything else.
Okay. So, and this is open, originally it was just open to Jaffrey residents, and now it's open to anybody in Eversource territory.
Yes, one of the things I did, yes, if this was built with that meter for no. With no charge at all.
Dory,
Yes,
you said that this project, which has not yet happened, is the first one in the area. There was
yes.
something in the ledger transcript a few weeks ago about a proposal that went in off of Greenfield Road.
So that is a different kind of project, and where's Ann? Ann would be the one, yeah.
And do you have a second to talk about
The article made it sound like it was gonna be another solar farm.
It's definitely a large solar array, but I don't know if it's,
Yeah.
if it would be considered an actual solar farm. Is the Greenfield Road proposal for a solar farm?
Not for people to buy into, I don't
That's
think.
what I meant,
There is it's a money-making operation for the owner who lives in St. John's, the island. And, yeah, and they're in the queue for the substation and, that kind of thing. We're concerned that we can't see really why it's so advantageous to them, and we are afraid it's not advantageous to Peterborough. We don't know what the benefit to Peterborough is, but there's a planning board hearing on it
Monday?
Monday, yeah.
Well, I just want to make an observation here. In building large solar arrays, we've got to do them sooner or later. We got to do them.
Yeah,
So it may not benefit the town. I mean, if it's a viable project, but I mean, there are other places, and I mean, I know
Yeah.
when I was involved with clean energy, I mean, there's lots of large parcels, and if they have access to the grid,
that's the
we
issue.
need to
where-
build those, whether we wanna have them in our backyard, and NIMBYs are one of the biggest problems with them. But let me just put it this way, if you don't wanna live in the dark, we're gonna need to build these large multiple, and New Hampshire is way behind. I mean, they've been built almost everywhere else. And if we decide that we don't wanna build those, it's not about who gets that
No, we
electricity,
don't
it's not the
build it.
solar farm.
We don't
It's
want it to put out, stay in the queue and not be able to get, say, the solar panels that are going on the Catholic Charities development of low-income housing, which is
Yeah, they shouldn't.
really
each other.
wonderful.
Projects, is that?
We're, that's something we don't know whether
Right.
it would, but we want to make sure that it won't.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the thought. We need to make sure that it's not gonna keep Peterborough from getting more solar that's benefit to Peterborough.
Yeah, that's more of a grid connection issue, which is
Yeah.
another whole subject.
Yeah,
We'll
that's-
spend an hour
that's-
on that. And
Right,
Yeah.
But to answer your question, it is not community solar.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
the article wasn't clear. I just
Yeah.
was curious.
Yeah.
So
Thank
many
you,
things
Ann.
to get bombarded with now, it's hard to determine.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing that may happen is with these big arrays that are gonna be tied into the grid, it depends on which transmission line they're tying into.
Yep.
I have heard that there are at least 3 large grid proposals for Peterborough, all going on to the same transmission line. And Eversource has indicated that they will have to upgrade the transmission lines, which in turn may increase electric rates for not just Peterborough, but surrounding towns. So it's a regional impact.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
yeah, and yet, let's talk about that for a second, because you brought it up. I mean, it's an important consideration. Those are happening all the time. Every source applies for those. They're talking about some significant rate increases for irrespective of any solar.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is climate change is real, and we either start generating clean electricity or the planet is gonna bake. And it is already overheating. It's gonna get a lot worse if we don't start doing this. These large projects are gonna require transmission upgrade. The beauty of it is that the bipartisan infrastructure law and other laws have provided funding for that, for some of that. So it doesn't all have to fall on the payer, but at the end of the day, if we don't make these upgrades, we're not gonna be able to generate the clean energy, and I'd rather have it generated nearby, because that ultimately reduces the distribution costs. So, if it raises transmission, it's actually gonna lower it for those that are in the area, because it's not being transmitted, right? It's in the distribution network.
A lot of states, those costs are passed, they can pass those costs on to the developer of the solar.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But that might not be in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't
Can
know.
I ask, in New Hampshire, is there any way, are you guys actively advocating for state incentives for solar? Is PrEP involved in that at all, or
PrEP
where does that stand?
PrEP is not involved, but many of our members are involved with Clean Energy New Hampshire, where John worked for last, which is pretty much the flagship energy organization in the state. And that rebate has been problematic for a very long time. And so letting it lapse was actually something that Clean Energy New Hampshire was okay with at this point, so that there can be something put forward that is actually much more beneficial. The way it was designed in the most recent incarnation did nothing to encourage people to actually get solar. So we as an entity are not involved in that, but we as individuals are. Our focus as an organization is pretty hyper local. And so.
I mean, I'd be happy to help more too. I've been in the industry a while. Actually, I know John I used to call him Jack pretty well. This is Lisa
You
Francis.
must be Lisa.
Is it?
But I sit on the board of the Northeast Clean Energy Council, and now I'm sort of semi-retired, and I have a place in Jaffrey, and I'd love to get more involved to see if we can make it happen. I mean, it seems kind of
Awesome.
crazy that there's not a state incentive.
Yeah, welcome to New Hampshire.
Yeah. I would say, please, again, email us at, info@prepnh.org. Actually, you've already done that. I got your email this morning.
Yeah,
So yes, we will be in touch and we can talk more about how to plug you in.
okay, that'd be great.
To work with Lisa.
Oh, okay, great. Lots of people know Lisa.
Yeah.
Helen Fairman is here as well, so.
Oh, hi, Helen.
Um,
We
yes.
we haven't talked about block power. Are they still able to help us with any of these projects?
Okay. So that is actually an entirely different program. We are hoping, actually, we are going to be doing a campaign soon that will help people get heat pumps installed in their homes. And that is a program where we got a grant to work with Block Power to help facilitate and project manage that program. We got the award last October. We have not seen a dime of that money yet. So it is to be seen. We know we will be doing that program. It is likely not going to happen until the new year. And so we will definitely keep you posted. But that's actually a really good segue to this, if that's okay, so part of that program is to be helping people in many ways to be doing the electrification projects that you want to do, but have either so many questions about, or don't know where to start, don't know what order to do things in. And so we're going to be starting what we're calling a coaching program, where there will be people who have done work on their homes and or have gotten some training on how to understand heat pump technology and how to go about evaluating a home. And so we're going to be kicking that off with kind of a soft launch on October 26th with a panel of coaches who have done work on their home to just talk briefly about what they've done, and then to be able to spread out in the room so that people can talk to them about their projects. And so we will have somebody who has done a project with heat pumps, with solar, with battery storage, one who's bought an EV, and what's the last one?
Weatherization.
Weatherization, of course, weatherization. And so we encourage you to come to that event to get started. We also have a way that you can, actually, we don't have that yet. We will, at that point, have a way to sign up to get coached, so you can kind of continue the conversation from there. And if any of you have done any work on your home that you would be willing to share with your neighbors, we do have an online form to fill out that where you can be a coach. And it doesn't necessarily, it does not require you to be an expert, but it just requires that you be willing to talk about your experience, because you are an expert on your experience.
We actually have a sign up sheet for that on the table right outside the door.
Yeah.
As well as more information.
I'll just say that I am firmly a believer of the heat pumps. I have installed I installed a heat pump water heater. I was very impressed with that. My electric bill hardly even moved. In fact, I have shut off the electric elements for it, and it's just the two of us. It's a 60-gallon tank. There was a rebate from the state. I also got a credit from my federal, and I liked it so much, I went out and bought a mini split system, which has 5 heads on it. And I installed that myself. And it's working. It has worked very well for the air conditioning. So last month was the first full month I had the system running. And between everything that we use in the house, I've also done LED lighting in the house and everything. My electric usage for the month was 450 kilowatt hours, which is pretty reasonable. The average, I looked it up, is about 650. So the breaking point on this is gonna be, now, the heat pumps are very efficient on the cooling. And we got I got the highest SEER rating I could get, which is the value of how well it is. And you have to get over 20 in order to get the federal rebate. So it was like a SEER 22, but it's not as efficient on the heating end of it. So it'll be interesting to see how efficient it is on the heating end of it.
So what I do know is that if you get a cold climate heat pump, those are much more efficient up to, I think it's like minus 13 degrees.
So
Then they start to lose efficiency.
okay, so the one I've got is rated down to 25 below.
Okay, well then you should be fine.
I should be, I have backup, I have pellet stove, I have,
Right.
you know, all the original stuff in the house, so I have plenty of stuff to back me up. But again, I'm just wondering, I don't want to commit to anything solar as the size and everything until I get a winter's use out of
That
what
makes
this is
sense.
gonna do.
Definitely, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I can say, I have a little cabin in Jaffrey and recently replaced my oil furnace with heat pumps and it worked wonderfully.
Yeah.
The other little factoid is that the state with the fastest uptake of cold climate heat pumps is Maine. So if Maine can keep warm, so can we. The other piece to know is that in the Inflation Reduction Act, there are significant rebates for heat pumps if you qualify with your income, and those income qualifications are pretty generous, up to 150% of the area median income. Surprisingly, at least to me, the DOE, the New Hampshire DOE actually applied very early to get our rebate program up and running. I've just gotten word that the funding for our program should be coming in October. And so that means that the program could be up and running by the beginning of 2025. The rebates that the IRA includes are up to $8,000. So it's a really, it can be a game changer. So just wanted people to know that.
Now, you talked about income. Any idea about what?
What the area median income is? It depends upon your family size. So do you remember what?
Just because I'm thinking, I retired, I'm a school teacher, but I retired this past year.
Mhm.
So obviously income's gonna be higher now
Find it quick. I mean,
Yeah.
New Hampshire's-
versus
Yeah.
next year I'll be a full retirement
Yeah.
year.
Right. So I would say, I think in Peterborough, for a family of four, it's about 100.
It's in the vicinity of 100,000.
Yeah.
So you
So
want-
up to
So yeah,
150.
150,000 would be the limit.
so earn up to less
100.
than is fine, is good.
Oh, yeah, anything less than you will,
All
so
right. So that's
you'll
not-
get more money if you are less than.
Okay.
But you can still get significant money if you're more than.
Well, you'll still get up to $8,000. It's a question of how large a portion of the project
Yeah,
you could get a rebate for. So if your income is 80% of area median income and below, you can get the full amount up to 8,000. If it's 150% and below, you could get up to 8,000, but it might be half the cost of the project. I can't remember.
it's up to 50%.
Okay.
The fine print,
The
but
less
it's,
you make, the better.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, basically.
All right.
one thing I will caution people about, when I was doing my system, I mentioned it to my insurance agent and she's really, really good. And you just have to kind of check with your insurance company because they're not all that happy about heat pumps. Because a lot of people that install them, of course, they don't install them a unit in the bathroom. And the insurance companies have had issues where they've had pipes freeze.
Oh.
Okay, so just, if you're gonna do it leave your other system, whatever you have intact, or just say, yeah, I've got.
Or get a resistance.
Yeah,
resistance
something
meter
like that,
for
just
the
say you
back.
have some sort of a backup, because I was kind of surprised, she says, we won't mention that, do you still have the oil? I said, yeah, I still have the oil, I'm not taking it out, it's there. It was a fairly new system, but yeah, that was one of the, one thing I just caution people about. Because insurance companies, you well know, are trying to get out of paying for anything and everything.
You can also get a whole home heat pump that is not the mini splits that are units in each room. And that will, you know, extend to everywhere that you have vents in your house. If you have forced hot air now,
Yeah.
you just switch out your furnace with a heat pump furnace. Done.
Accepted. Any other questions about solar? I know we kind of drifted.
Yeah.
And, can you speak to?
If you installed solar panels in 2011, you know, is it worth it to, upgrade? Or can you can't use both systems, I don't think, the old and the new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did it, I did my first one in 07, and, to put it in perspective, I have 180 watt modules. Today, you can buy modules, but you can't really buy many that are under 300 watts, so I double the output of my system. If I took that one off and put a new one in, I'd have to get a new inverter, of course, because it would be much bigger. And I've thought about it a few times, but the only reason I would do it is because it's on my garage and I have an electric vehicle. And my electric vehicle has outlets, which means I can power things in the garage when the power goes out. I started my snow blower a couple of times last winter without having to do the old pull thing, and it was really sweet. But if I could charge my electric vehicle battery from the solar system, which I can't now, I would think about doing it. But it's one of those, unless you have money just to play with, you're not gonna. It's really hard to justify, but that's my thinking, is when that controller comes in, I can do that, then all of a sudden,
What if you have battery storage in your house?
well, I do, but that's a separate, the house and the garage are separate.
Yeah, I'm thinking of me.
No, the
Oh.
IRA covers the incentive, so for the battery too, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
Yes, there's also a 30%
30% credit on the battery.
tax credit for the battery. So and batteries are still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But they will be, as John said, they are in that kind of takeoff part of the S curve. But we're not quite there as far as the actual cost coming down precipitously.
I have a problem with the batteries. Of course, I come from an automotive background when you had the lead acid batteries and the AGMs and everything. But I have a problem with it because of all the hazardous waste behind it. You know, we're trying to make everything clean. And that's the other thing I've been reading about, and I don't, about the recycled panels. And, the hazardous materials in the recycled solar panels that they're taking off of houses and everything. And supposedly some startup companies are coming up and starting to recycle these panels, but right now the information is pretty sketchy.
Well, the guy who started Sunrun Solar City, or Peter Rive Solar City, has started an offshoot company that is recycling modules now, and they're on the west. They're more on the West Coast, but you could always call them. I think they are a pretty reputable group, and so people are starting to actually factor that in. It's almost being required in some of the warranties that they deal with the recycling of the modules too. So there are starting to be businesses that are going to be doing that, which is great.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's valuable materials there, and for batteries, it's a whole different ballgame from lead acid to.
Yes, yeah.
And already there's discussions about capturing that back.
Mhm.
But used EV batteries are actually being used in terrestrial. So an example, a lot of old EV batteries are actually being used in houses for their backup power, because you don't care about how many miles you're gonna get.
Right.
It's not, the battery still works, it just doesn't get you very far anymore, but it's still got plenty of
It's
reserve.
enough to power you.
And if not, then ultimately there will be recycling of those, because there's valuable materials there. They think that within a couple of decades, the amount of raw materials that'll have to be mined for the battery production for using lithium ion type chemistries will be dramatically reduced, because the recycled ones will feed a majority of that
Yeah.
need as they become obsolete.
The other thing to remember too is that all energy production has costs. And so, you know, to hold us to a standard of having no cost is really kind of not keeping the playing field level. We definitely want to minimize it, and there are some really great startups that are looking at the recycling and minimizing those costs. But I would argue that those costs are less than having a planet that's not livable. So, this has been a great conversation. Any other questions or?
Yeah, can you speak to the resale value of a home that has solar panels?
That's a great one.
That is,
I mean,
I don't know.
the data, you know, back, you know, 5, 6 years ago, when I was more focused on it, was very sketchy. It was mostly California. But most recent data that I've seen, you know, from articles and reports, is that it has a significantly positive effect. The degree depends on where you are, but it's generally considered overwhelmingly a positive. So in other words, a house similar, you know, they're never two identical houses, but a house with solar and one without, as close as they can be, the one with solar is gonna have a higher resale value than the one without. And that's been documented enough beyond California now that it's pretty much accepted. And again, it's lower energy costs, so it's the cost to operate. And banks are even starting to acknowledge that from a financing point of view, if you've got a house with solar, your energy costs are gonna be lower to operate that house than the same house without solar.
One of the biggest home developers in the country, I can't remember the name of the company, but they're actually using that as a selling point now. They're building energy efficient homes with heat pumps and everything else, and they're selling it. You're paying a premium for them, but they're saying the cost to own is so much lower.
Right. And that resale value has been documented. You can Google it and you'll find some reports, but I know I've seen several that are much more universal than just those early California ones that we used for a while.
A lot of the earlier solar installations in New Hampshire, like with the hot water and everything, you know, you saw them on there, then, you know, 5 years later, they'd be all clouded up and again, which was, you know, part and parcel with it, and you see them all gone now. And there was a lot, because I considered buying some used panels, and then the manufacturer was down in Florida, and it was for water, and they'd gone out of business. And, you know, so, yeah, but it's changed a lot since then. Of course, the panels are more efficient, they're better built and everything.
But I was always proud to be able to say that the panels that I installed on my parents' house the solar water heating panels lasted 30 years. When Dad sold that house 30 years later, they were still working.
That's impressive.
Yeah, they were good collectors. I mean, I bought them and I put them on, but.
Sure. Well, you know, it is kind of interesting too, because you got to think about the other thing is because of all the climate change, like this summer has been one of the hottest summers we've had on record. So you can understand where things are going to fail. So whatever you buy, you have to really buy the best you could possibly can afford. Because otherwise it's going to deteriorate. As you can look at your cars and everything else, the wipers don't last as long as they used to, the paint peels off of it, all of this.
Do solar panels drive up the assessment of your house?
Good question. At the town by town basis, and many towns, I'd say a pretty high percentage of towns have exemptions.
Are you in Peterborough?
Hancock.
Hancock. I believe that Hancock just passed an ordinance that would not assess it.
Yeah, it's town by town, and like Joseph, we just raised the exemption. So we had an exemption that was capped, and we just last town meeting, we raised because panels, people are putting on bigger systems.
Yes. I know there was a couple of towns there where a fellow did all his due diligence, you know, ran all the numbers and everything, and he got hammered for taxes. You know, afterwards, and he said, after the taxes raised his price up, the solar panels really weren't, it wasn't, the payback was ridiculous. But I ran into this because I used to live in Greenfield, and I put in an outdoor wood boiler. And we fought back and forth for quite a while because they wanted to tax me for the outdoor wood boiler, and it was one of those I could burn anything in. And I installed it myself and everything, and I was getting wood from Asplund. It was given to me, so it was kind of free wood. it was a lot of work and everything, but they wanted to tax me an extra $1,000 in taxes on it. And I said, wait a minute, you said that you were going to do this. So we fought and petitioned and we got it, resolved. But it could have been upside down in a second.
And I would check with the town. I do believe that they just recently passed a warrant article that exempted solar from property taxes. If you're in Peterborough, while we don't have a warrant article that does that, the way the town interprets solar panels is that they are an appliance and they do not get, they're not factored in for your assessment.
Can you talk anything about, in your thing, you said don't go cheap when you buy it. What about like self-installing versus having a company?
I mean, as long as you things that matter, for example, you can use galvanized slags or stainless steel. I wouldn't say don't use galvanized, go for stainless steel. You're gonna spend a little more on that component because you want it to last 30 years as opposed to, hopefully 30 years. You know what I mean? It's that kind of decision making. So I mean, I think it's really about understanding you've got a system you want it to last for 30 years. Put it in that way. So you're not cutting corners. That's the main message. I mean, I think it's those details that make a difference. The flashings, you don't want them to leak. I mean, you want them, they're going to be as good as the roof. And again, there's plenty of technology. That's something where technology has gotten a lot better for securing the panels to a roof to make sure it won't leak. But again, paying attention to those, maybe spending a little extra for a better quality flashing specifically designed for a solar panel is worth it. And do it yourself or may or may not know that, but it's just cutting corners on something you want to last 30 years is like I mean, if you want to buy your underwear that way or your toilet paper, fine, but I wouldn't do it myself.
Are there used to be a group, I understand, but are there other groups that help each other?
I mean, there are ones that are around. I know that you mentioned you know of them. I know there's guys, what's his name? The heat pump, Doug Wade. I know there's guys that have done it. I mean, again, if they know what they're doing, like Doug's a professional, he's an engineer, he knows, HVAC really well. So he's the kind of guy that would know the things I'm referring to, whereas some people might not, if they're not, if they're not savvy. Just saying, be aware of the quality so that it will last a long time.
There is a group, whose precise name escapes me, but it's Hillsborough area.
It's Hillsborough Area Renewable Energy.
Plymouth's,
Yes,
Yes.
initiative, yeah, so it's the acronym is HAREI.
They help people with do-it-yourself solar projects.
Actually, you help people, so it's, you're part of a do-it-yourself group, so it's kind of a barn raising kind of mentality.
Yeah.
As long as the components and you do it right, I mean, it's fine, but I just make that point.
I have read a lot about of course, solar panels don't like high heat. They lose their efficiency. So yeah, that's, I've been reading a little bit about that. I haven't got in with too deep yet. And then the other thing is whatever you have for a roof. If you have a shingle roof, shingle roofs don't last 30 years anymore. You got about 10, maybe 15 years and you got to change your roof. And of course, if you put it on your roof, you're going to run the cost of having to have the whole thing removed and done again. So that's another.
I've already had to do, it was a very minor,
Actually protects the roof.
but
Yeah.
I have looked at the data though on the degradation of the modules and they don't actually degrade that much if you're using the mono or the polycrystalline silicon photovoltaic cells.
and the heat thing is relative. I mean, compared to Arizona, our heat is a big concern here. And they love cool. I mean, I can see my systems and I can actually see the difference on a really cool sunny day versus a really hot sunny day. You can actually see
The percentage of
the numbers are very different.
Yeah.
And they like that cool air, but I mean, if you want to optimize everything, put it on the ground where you're not going to have a roof right behind it. But on the other hand, if you've got a room underneath that and it's an old antique, I remember doing it for an antique cake, which I grew up in. And after I put the panels on the roof, they said, our upstairs is so much cooler now.
Oh,
So
sure.
of course, I got shade. They got this-
Well, that's.
So it's all, relative, but the heat thing, you can actually look at that. Every module has the effect of the temperature on the module. You can see that right on their spec sheets. So if you're concerned about putting it on a roof where you think it's going to be really hot.
Yeah.
you're still gonna have a gap behind it. It's not gonna be.
Yes,
less
yeah,
time.
yeah.
You can actually buy a module that's gonna be more tolerant than less,
Mhm.
if that's a concern. It's a pretty minor.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I hadn't realized that they were heat sensitive.
Yeah, they do like cool, which is really, our climate is more conducive to that, which is one of the reasons why overall our modules do much better up here than you'd think.
Sure. I know, quite a few years ago, we had gone to Hawaii and, they have big arrays there and almost every house and condo has solar collectors on it. So the big thing in Hawaii, all the sugarcane fields, because they no longer raise sugarcane there, they're all, solar fields.
So, thank you, everyone. This has been a great conversation. We've gone a bit over, but that's fine because we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. John, will you stick around for a little bit if people have more questions? And please come to events. So we've got the panel, how to electrify your home, neighbors coaching neighbors launch on October 26th. There is also going to be the second annual Monadnock Clean Energy Fair. Last year it was in Peterborough. This year it is in Keene at the airport. That's on the 28th of September. And all of these things, we've got cards to help you remember if you're interested. Thank you so much for coming. And if you would like to join PrEP, just let us know. You can talk to one of us. Oh, raise your hand if you're in PrEP. Okay. So you can come talk to one of us and or email us at info@prepnh.org. Thanks. And
Thanks so
thank you.
much, John.
And
Thank you all.
Yes, you were awesome.
Great.